People often look away when they see my skin, wrinkled and crisscrossed with thick scars. They think I'm just a pitiful old woman who suffered a tragic accident. But they are dead wrong. These raised, uneven scars aren't just the aftermath of a fire. They are the map of the most devastating betrayal a mother could ever endure. Just imagine being engulfed in flames in the safety of your own bed, your flesh melting like wax, and as you drag yourself to the window, screaming for help, you lock eyes with your only daughter standing in the window across the yard. She wasn't there to call the fire department. She was standing there waiting for her own mother to turn to ash so she could inherit a fortune. I was 77 years old. With 60% of my body covered in third-degree burns, the doctors shook their heads and had my death certificate ready to sign. But they underestimated the will of a woman raised by the high desert. While they pumped me full of morphine, waiting for me to take my last breath, I was secretly using my mother's ancient herbal remedies to regenerate my own flesh right under their noses. I am Margaret, and I did not die that night. I rose from my own ashes to make the monsters pay. If you are listening from anywhere in the world, please leave a comment and subscribe, because there are truths that need to be spread, even if they might shake your faith. There are stories that, no matter how painful, simply must be told. I dragged myself across the bed in desperation, trying to escape the flames that were already climbing up my legs. The pain was so great, I don't know how I didn't pass out right there. Every movement I made felt like I was tearing off a piece of my own skin that was already sticking to the burning covers. The air was growing thin, and the heat suffocated me just as much as the smoke. I felt certain I was going to die right there, charred in my own bed. I managed to fall to the floor, but there was fire there too. My entire nightgown was in flames now, stuck to my body as if it were part of my skin. I screamed for help, but my voice barely came out, hoarse from the smoke, lost in the noise of the fire consuming the timber of the house. The bedroom door had already turned into a wall of fire. There was no way out through there. That was when I saw the window, the only hope of escaping that hell. At that age, 77 years old, you don't have the strength or the agility of youth anymore. Every step toward the window was torture. The fire had already burned my feet, my legs, my arms, part of my face, the skin melting, dripping like wax. I will never forget the smell of my own burning flesh. It is a scent that sears itself into your memory, one that returns to haunt you in your darkest nightmares. I dragged myself across the burning floor, every inch a battle against hallucinatory pain. I reached the window almost without strength, my whole body shaking, my vision blurred by smoke and tears that dried in the heat before they could even run down my face properly. The glass was hot as coals when I touched it. I broke it with my elbow, cutting my arm that was already all burned, but I didn't even feel the cut amidst so much pain. The cool night air entered for a second, giving a small relief before being swallowed by the hungry fire that consumed everything. I didn't think twice. It was jump or burn to death. My room was on the second floor of the house, about 20 feet from the ground. At that moment, it didn't matter. I preferred to die from the fall than to continue feeling that hallucinatory pain of the fire eating my skin. I threw myself out without looking, without thinking about the consequences. Listen to me, folks. People talk about survival instinct, but trust me, until death is breathing down your neck, you have no idea how strong you truly are. In that moment, fear vanishes, leaving only one screaming command in your head: live. Never underestimate the will of an old woman who's seen it all. The wind from the fall even put out some flames on my clothes, but others kept burning. I fell right on top of the rose bushes that I had planted myself years ago. The impact was like 1,000 knives at the same time. I felt bones breaking, the air leaving my lungs all at once. I broke 3 ribs, my right arm, and injured my spine. But I was alive, out of that hell. Even so, some parts of my nightgown were still burning, stuck to my skin. I rolled on the grass wet with the night dew, trying to put out what remained of the fire. Every movement was indescribable agony. The pain was so much that I started to lose consciousness. Before passing out, I looked up and saw him in the window of my daughter's room, on the other side of the house, which hadn't caught fire yet. Richard, my son-in-law, looking at me with an expression I will never forget. It wasn't surprise, nor concern. It was disappointment. Disappointment that I had managed to escape. The burns on my skin were agony, yes, but that cold look in his eyes, that hurt 1,000 times worse. And beside him, I thought I saw Sarah. She stood rigid, her face a mask of terrifying indifference. In that moment of agony, through the haze of smoke and pain, I didn't see a daughter horrified by her mother's suffering. I saw an accomplice. That belief broke my heart more than the fire ever could. Has anyone listening to this story ever been stabbed in the back by the person you trusted most? That ice-cold feeling running down your spine right in the middle of a fire. If you've been there, leave a comment. Let me know I'm not walking this road of healing alone. That was when I understood everything. It wasn't an accident at all. He had planned to kill me in that horrible way, poured the gasoline while I slept, set it on fire, and stood watching, waiting to see me turn to ashes. The last thing I remember before blacking out completely was the sound of sirens in the distance. Some neighbor must have seen the fire and called the fire department. I don't know how long I lay there on the grass, semi-conscious, feeling every inch of burned skin throb with a pain that not even in my worst nightmares could I imagine. Time seems to stop when the pain is that great. Seconds turn into hours. I woke up 3 days later at the hospital in Phoenix. They had transferred me there because Sedona didn't have the facilities to treat such severe burns. 60% of my body was burned, the doctors confirmed later. Most of it was 2nd and 3rd degree. Arms, legs, torso, part of the face and neck. "A miracle you're alive," was what the oldest doctor said, with that look of someone who had seen a lot of tragedy in life. "At your age, with this amount of burns, you shouldn't have even survived the trip here." He wasn't exaggerating. I learned later that the mortality rate for a woman of my age with burns covering more than 50% of her body is nearly 95%. The Bow score, a system doctors use to predict death in burn victims, essentially gave me a score of over 140, a death sentence by any medical standard. Statistics are powerful, but they didn't account for Margaret's grit or her ancestral knowledge. Stick around, because the specific combination of herbs she used to defy this death sentence is something you'll want to hear about. They calculate life with cold numbers on a page, but they forgot the most important variable, the will of a woman raised by the high desert. Science is wonderful, I don't deny that, but sometimes miracles only come to those who dare to defy the statistics and believe in the regenerative power of their own bodies. My skin wasn't just burned. The protective barrier of my body was gone, leaving me open to lethal infections that kill thousands of burn victims annually. I needed to understand what was happening to me to fight it. The fire had destroyed the epidermis and dermis, reaching the subcutaneous tissue. But I knew that if I could stimulate the deep tissue cells, life could return. The first days were a nightmare of pain. Even with morphine in my veins, it was as if the fire were still burning beneath my skin. Every dressing change tore pieces of me away with it. I screamed so much I went hoarse. The more experienced nurses would arrive at the room with tears in their eyes, knowing what was going to happen during wound cleaning. I had high fevers, infections, delirium. The doctors didn't give much hope. They said amongst themselves, thinking I couldn't hear, that it was a matter of days until my body couldn't take it anymore. That was when I started asking my daughter to bring some things from home. At first, she didn't understand. She thought it was delirium from the fever, from the strong medication. "Mom, you're not right in the head yet because of the meds." I know many of you listening right now might want to blame Sarah, call her stupid or heartless. But listen to me. Psychological manipulation is like boiling a frog. It happens slowly, sweetly, in the name of love, until even the smartest woman becomes blind to the trap. Don't be too quick to judge, because sometimes the prey doesn't even know she's being hunted. Sarah hesitated, telling me, "Mom, you need to rest." But I insisted. I needed her help. Sarah, my only daughter, still didn't believe that it was her husband who had done that to me. She thought it had been an accident, that I had left a candle burning, the stove on, senile old lady stuff, as she herself said when she thought I wasn't listening. Even so, she brought what I asked for. Herbs I had stored in the pantry, the oils I prepared myself, the knowledge I inherited from my mother, who was a midwife and healer. Hazel Smith was respected all over the high desert as the woman who saved more lives than any graduated doctor. Since I was a little girl, I helped her prepare the remedies to care for the sick. I saw her save people with burns, almost as severe as mine, using only what nature offered. When the nurses left at night, I secretly applied the herbal mixtures to the most burned parts. I used a potent blend of desert plants remedies I had extracted myself at the ranch. I wasn't inventing these cures, I was remembering them. And I wasn't alone. According to the World Health Organization, nearly 80% of the world's population, particularly in Asian and African nations, relies on traditional plant-based medicine for their primary health care. Yet, here in this sterile American hospital, my wisdom was treated as witchcraft. I mixed the chaparral, which contains nordyhydroguaretic acid, a potent antioxidant, with the cooling gel of the aloe. I knew that while modern medicine sterilized the wound, my mother's mixture instructed the skin to remember how to grow. Now, don't you go rolling your eyes thinking this is just superstition. Nature is the world's greatest laboratory. Long before modern pills, our ancestors survived thousands of years thanks to these very roots and leaves. Do any of you still keep the old folk remedies passed down by your grandparents? Let me know in the comments, I'd love to hear about them. It stung like the devil at first, but then came a relief that not even the expensive hospital drugs could give. I did this in the early hours with the help of one of the younger nurses, who was curious about the old ways and helped me in secret. After a week of this double treatment, the modern medicine of the doctors and the ancient wisdom of my mother, the doctors themselves began to be amazed at the speed of recovery. The wounds they thought would necrose started showing signs of healing. The fever went down, the infections receded. The oldest doctor went so far as to say he had never seen anything like it in 50 years of practice. A 7-year-old lady surviving burns of that degree was already extraordinary. Improving at that speed was inexplicable to his science. While the body healed, the mind worked. I began to put the pieces together, to understand my son-in-law's diabolical plan. Richard had arrived in my daughter's life about 3 years earlier, when she was already in her early 52s, single, thinking she wouldn't marry anymore. He appeared like Prince Charming, full of attention, full of affection. In 6 months, he was already living with us. At first, I confess I even liked it. Sarah had always been very lonely, dedicated to her studies and then to the family businesses. I thought she had finally found a partner, but soon I began to notice strange things. Richard always asking about the land deeds, about how much the markets yielded, wanting to participate in meetings with the managers. At first, I thought it was good. I thought he wanted to help. After all, since my Robert died 15 years ago, it was just me running everything alone, with the help of Sarah, who took care of the numbers more. I was already tired, age weighing on me. But little by little I realized that his interest wasn't helping, it was taking over. He began to distance Sarah from me, saying that I was going senile, that I didn't know how to manage properly anymore, that I was going to end up losing everything her father had built with so much sweat. I didn't know it then, but I was becoming a statistic in a silent epidemic. In the United States alone, approximately 1 in 10 Americans aged 60 and older have experienced some form of elder abuse. Even more heartbreaking is that in nearly 60% of elder abuse and neglect incidents, the perpetrator is a family member, often an adult child or a spouse. Financial exploitation of the elderly costs older Americans over $2.6 billion annually. Richard wasn't just a bad son-in-law. He was a predator following a playbook used against millions of seniors who are made to feel useless so they can be robbed. He planted doubts in her head about my sanity. He even brought a doctor friend of his to the house, who after a half-hour conversation said I had senile dementia and should be removed from the business. That was when my eyes opened for good. I changed my will, took away his access to the accounts, warned the market managers that they should only accept orders from me or Sarah. He must have found out. On the eve of the fire, he had gone to the county recorder's office to check the status of the deeds. I learned later, from a neighbor who worked there, that he left furious upon discovering that I had changed everything, leaving the majority directly to Sarah, with a life estate for me and a clause that prevented her from transferring any asset to her husband. That was the last straw for him. That same night, we had dinner together. I remember him being especially attentive, serving my plate, filling my glass of juice. I suspect to this day that he put some drug in it to make me sleep heavier. I went to bed early that night, around 9 p.m., tired like never before. I slept like a rock. I only woke up with the room already taken by fire and the strong smell of gasoline. He had thrown fuel all over the room, on the curtains, on the bed, even on top of me, and set it on fire. The plan was for me to die sleeping, intoxicated